Hello everyone, Gabriel here, and today we are going to learn how to extract the data from that kind of complex PDF table. First thing we can see here is that we have several records here, so that's one record, and it starts with that kind of text up here and then ends with that kind of text, and then here you have another one, and to make everything a little bit more complex, it ends on the other page, and then we have the third record here, and it also ends on the other page. So we are going to learn how to extract the data of each record, and each of those tables we are going to divide it into 3 tables so we can extract the data correctly. And we are also going to learn how to export all the data into an XML file. First thing is open ChronoScan, and we have to create a new batch and a new job for that batch. Let's name it complex PDF table job. There we go. And we click next. We don't need Intelli-Tag, we don't need barcode reading, so we just deselect Intelli-Tag, and if you have barcode selected, just deselect it and then click next. We have multi-image documents and we are going to split them manually, so we select those 2 and then click next. And here on the fields, we are not going to use invoice fields, let's just use generic fields. Let's delete all of those, and let's leave only that one. If we try to delete it, it will give an error. And let's match up to those fields up here. Those are the constant data, and we need, if you need them, that's how you do it. Let's just match the same kind of layout here. And since we are exporting to XML, we want to replace all the spaces with underscores. So we just have here truck underscore ID, or you just don't use spaces at all. Driver name, there we go. Delivery date, underscore date, and here we can make sure that instead of field type alphanumeric, we have field type date. That will reduce the possibility of errors. And we have origin and destination. Origin, and let's create a new one, destination. Now we are ready to click on next. That won't matter because we want XML export, so we just click next. Let's make sure we have several images, manual split, correct, no barcode because we don't need barcode. And there we go, our fields are all correct. And now let's just click finish. Let's name our first batch, complex PDF table batch 1. And let's create the batch. Now we are ready to import our files. The first thing we have to know here is we don't want to import all of our files, we just want to import a sample, 1 or 2 of them. So we just drag and drop from Windows Explorer, click yes. And here we have to make sure we have convert pages to image and the resolution around 200, 300 or 400. That's the optimal resolution, and we have to make sure we have extract text from PDF selected. And then we click OK. And let's not forget that that should be only for the first 1 or 2 documents of our whole batch, because we just want to set things up before we start importing and reading all the other documents. The first thing is an easy thing to do is to capture those fields up here. All we gotta do is we have to make sure we have OCR zones mode selected up here, and then we select the field on the right here, and we create the area where that field is showing up. There we go. And driver name, since names can be very lengthy, you might just want to create a little bigger of an area here. And for all other names, the date, same thing. You might want to make it a little bigger than the actual date here, because you might have 2 digits for the month. And Now origin and destination, same thing. You might want to be generous with the area you create for those two. And here we go. And you can see everything was read successfully. Now, the other thing we have to do is, in order to read all those records separately, we have to actually split them. And ChronoScan can split them based on text. And it will create several documents with only the parts of the files of the text that you need. To do that, we have to go up here and click on the OCR triggers button up here. And you can see new OCR trigger. We are going to use that CO 2.text to tell ChronoScan every time a new record appears. So every time it reads CO, it will get that part of the document before or after the CO until another one appears, and it will isolate them. Let's do it. Since we just want CO, let's just create an area here, and if we look at the other documents, the layout is similar. So a column, it doesn't need to be large here, because the text always appears on the same place, on the same line here. That window will appear, you just click OK. And on the properties panel here that just opened, we name it report split. We want it to show on all pages, and we want it to run on all types. Down here on the action, we want to change the action to report split. And since we are using the same text, we have to make sure we have the use constant report split key as true, because that's the only kind of text we are going to use to split our reports. Now, on text exist, on trigger conditions here, you have to make sure that on text exist, and if you click it, you will see a drop-down menu. You click it, and then we have the CO here. So every time that ChronoScan reads that CO, as you can see here, it already read that one, it will split the document. To see that, we go to the Scan Input tab up here, and then we select all documents, and then we click on the process selection. Here we have to make sure we have OCR triggers selected, so we just make sure it's selected, and then we click OK. Now you're going to see that we have, instead of one document, we have several of them. You can see the first one, and you can see those red fields here. If you take a look, let's look at this document, for instance, this page of this document. And if we click on the view text here, you can see that the program is ignoring everything from the other report. So we know that it was correctly split. And if we go back to the previous page on that little arrow up here, you can see that it is ignoring all that part of the document. It is only reading that part of the document. Now we know we are good to go. The first thing is we go to the first page to set things further. Now, the first thing we are going to do is to make sure you're on the first page, and we don't want all that text showing up here. We just click again on view text here, and now it's much easier to work on. We are going to set up 3 grids. We have a 3 grid setup. So we go up here on the data panels button, and let's just activate the first 3 of them, and then we click close. Now you can see we have a grid control here. So we have 3 grid controls, one for each of the grids we are going to use. The first information we are going to extract is that information here, and in order to even start creating our grids, we have to set up 2 reference lines. So on the OCR triggers function, we want to create a vertical line here and another one down here to tell ChronoScan where the table starts and where it ends. And we have to make it full page. So we come up here. Let's make sure it is on that line here, and we can create the trigger outside of the document. Let's create a box here, and we don't want to set up anything here. Let's just click OK. Let's call it table start. We want it to show on all pages and also to run on all types. That might not be your case, but here we want it to run on all types. And down here on the action, we want to change it to create horizontal reference line. And now you can see it's green and it has a line here, a green line here. And we want to do the same thing down here. Let's just create a box around here. Should be good. We click OK. And now let's rename it table end. There we go. We want it to show on all pages and to run on all types. Here we go. And down here again, we change it, the action, to create horizontal reference line. And you can see our reference line here. And now we are finally ready to start setting up our grids. The first thing is go to the modules panel down here, and we make sure we have the first grid control tab selected here, and let's click on the options button. Here we want to make sure our grid is set up. If we look closer to that column of our table, we can see we have the type of the sender, we have the name of the sender on the second line, and the other lines are just the address of the sender. So we need 3 details lines here, 3 capture fields here, although we are only going to be using 1 because that's only a single column. What we do is just we click on delete all, click yes, and let's create the fields we want because that's the information we want to extract. Let's call it sender underscore type, and this has to be a custom field because we want to get only the first line. So we click here on custom, and you can see all those options show up here. And we don't want to remove carriage return because otherwise the program will read everything as a single line, and we don't want that on any of the fields. We go down here and on the function, we want to cut first line of the column, and the column we are going to be using is the last one. Because that's the one that will show up on the grid here. We don't need sender type. Let's just set it up when we have the last column set up. We can use the other ones, but we're going to use the sender address because that will be the column that will read everything. Again, here we have sender underscore name. It will also be custom, and we don't want to remove carried return. Here we need to cut the first line again, so on function we will also cut the first line. You can see that the first one was already cut. Now it is cutting the second one and the third one. Let's add one more, and let's call it sender address. We are going to leave it on alphanumeric, and we don't want to remove carriage return once again, otherwise the whole information extraction will fail. And now we can just set the parameter here for the first 2 custom columns. We just click on the drop down menu, and then we use we can't see the sender address yet. Let's see. Now let's just click OK and then options again, so it reloads. And on the parameters down here, there we go. Now we have sender address. We want it for the first and the second one. Here function, and under function we have parameters. Let's just use the column name sender address. Now we are ready to create our grid here. Let's click on Edit Grid and let's create our grid here. We just need that part, so we just go from up here until the last line, until the table end reference line, and we just want to match the same column size. And you can see it can read those kinds of text, but it doesn't read that last one because it's not part of the document, so the program just ignores it. We have to make sure a few things are okay. We want that information here, so we want to push that header size a little bit up. There we go. We want to right click it and make it a master column. Click on split rows based on this column. So now it's green, so it's good. It's already set to sender address, so it's also good. We right click again. We want to select if a carriage return the text, so you can see it's looking good already. You also want to split over. Now it's looking even better. And we want to make sure that it's reading all the data. So we have to left or right click here, and then the value must meet a regular expression. And we want the program to, every time it reads 2 characters and 2 points, it splits. So it's a cell every time that happens. We click on use full line, and let's make sure that happens. We have square brackets A to Z, so we have capital letters and curly brackets. That will happen 2 times, and we close the curly brackets, and then we add 2 dots here. That tells the program that every time it reads 2 capital letters and 2 dots, it will split. Now we know that everything will work. The other thing we have to do is to go up here on the grid control button. We can left click or right click it doesn't matter. And we want to use it on all pages, so you click on it, and on the upper limit we want to be on the table start, and the lower limit we want it to be on table end. And one other thing, since you can see here it starts on the bottom of the page, so we also want to go on the grid menu and make sure the upper position is relative to the report split for now. And you can see we have the trigger here. Now let's read it. Let's read it to make sure we have everything right. And you can see everything is perfect. We have the sender type, we have the sender name, and we have the sender address. If we go to the next document actually, and if we read, you can see there is some information missing, and that's because on the next page you can see there is a problem. That sign here shows there is a problem with the trigger. It's not triggering, so the program doesn't know where the table ends. What we have to do here is click again on the Edit Grid button here on the right. Let's click on the grid menu again, and the upper position relative to trigger. You can see here it is not relative to nothing, so we just click on background. Now if you read now, you can see everything was perfectly read. We have the name and we have the address. So we have to make sure all those attention signs are attended to, and we have to make sure it's always relative to some kind of trigger. Now that we have our first grid set up and ready to go, we're going to go to the second grid actually. To start working on the second grid, we have to go down here to the Grid Control tab 2, the second grid control, and we're going to use that part of the table. You see there is a lot of information, but it's not hard to make it work. The first thing we're going to do is go to the Options button here and make sure you are on the Grid Control 2 tab here. Go to the Options and let's just delete all fields. Click yes, and let's make sure our fields match. And then we are going to have a few custom fields on that information here that you can see there are 2 lines, and you have the container number and the container CO number. So we have to separate those 2. Let's create the first one. It will be called bill number. No, not bill number, it will be number of packages. So number of packages. And don't forget to use always the underscore. It's alphanumeric, it's all right. Let's add another one, and here we have to create the first one and then a custom one. We are going to use container number, and let's just create the second one and call it container serial number. There we go. And we know that we want to either cut the first line or cut the last line. Here, let's just cut, since we have here a 3-line text here, let's just cut the first one and then read the rest. We are going to use the container number as alphanumeric, and we don't want to remove carriage return. And on the container serial number, let's make it, instead of alphanumeric, let's make it custom. We don't want to remove carriage return. There we go. And we want to make sure the function is set to cut last line. But here, if you set to last line, you will only get that last one. But if you want to cut the first one, that would make more sense. We would have to make the container number custom here, like this, and make sure the function is cut first line. And then let's make the container serial alphanumeric again. Always making sure the carriage return is not removed. And up here, on the parameter of the function, we want to cut from the container serial number. So it will the field here that we will have here is the container serial number. Now everything is just good. We just add another field. That will be description of goods. We can just leave it as it is. Cash/deposit. There we go. Size in cubic meters. So M3 should be all right. And we have gross weight in kilograms. Gross _WT kj. There we go. And we just click OK. Now we are ready to create our grid. So as the other step, we come here on the Edit Grid button. And you can see we have new capture grid cursor here. Let's just select from here, up here, to here. We just match again the original table size and the reference lines here and release it. First thing is we want to move the header up. As you can see here, it's taking up some of our data. So let's just get our mouse around here and then push it up. And here on those 2 fields, we want to make sure, let's first delete those useless ones, left or right click and delete column again. And let's make sure it fits. So we have gross weight here, it's good. We might just want to push it a little bit further up. The size, here we go, cash deposit. Again here, and we always want to match the original column. Here we go, we have container number and container serial number. If we look at the options, our custom field is the container number, and that one is just alphanumeric. That will be cut first line. So the column we want here is container serial number. So let's just delete the container number. We go up here to that little area here. Left click it and delete column. There we go. Now we just make sure it matches. And as the other ones, we are going to use that last one as master. You can see it's already green, so it is the master, but we have to make sure we have a few things right. Let's make sure we have to click on the header here. You have to make sure it splits over, and you can see now everything is split correctly. And we also want to make sure it detects the carriage return. And that's it. Now we go to the left of the grid here on the grid menu. Click it, and then let's make sure we use it on all pages. Again, the upper limit is the table start, the lower limit is the table end, and the upper position is relative to report split. So now that's also relative to that one. And now we make sure everything is working by clicking on the read button. Let's make sure everything is good. We can see here there is an extra line, but that shouldn't worry, 54 bales, and there we go. And you can see here, since we cut only the first line, that shows up here, and here we have that extra character that I don't really know what it is, but if you want it here, you know how to do it, and if you want it here, you also know how to do that. And you can see everything else was perfectly exported. And you can also see that those cells here, they were all imported as a single line of text. You could be able to get each of the lines, but I don't know how useful that would be. Now we are ready to go to the third column. In order to create the third table, we have to make sure we are on the grid control tab here, so we select it. And let's click on options to edit the data we want to extract. We have here the bill number, we have the bill date, and we have the bill type. So we just delete all the fields that we have here. Click yes, and let's create the 3 fields we need. The first one will be bill underscore number. Second one will be bill underscore date. And then the third one will be bill underscore type. Now we have a full line here, and we need to make sure we extract only little bits of that line here, of that cell here. The first one will be a custom. All of them will end up being customs, but we don't want to remove the carriage return. There we go. And the function we want on it here, we want to make sure we cut the first line of the bill type. That will be the header that will be showing up here. Second one will also be custom, and here is where we are going to use tags. We don't want to remove the carriage return either. And let's go on function and then cut text between. And you can see here it asks for start tag and end tag. We just go to the parameters, we can select our column here, and now we add a comma. And you can see it starts with dated and ends with type. So we have to type that text in here. Let's just type dated, 2 dots, straight slash, and then type with capital T and 2 dots. And that should do it. There we go. And here it is working also. And down here, let's just leave it as alphanumeric. Just click OK. We won't be messing with that right now. So we just make sure we are on grid control tree tab and click on edit grid. And let's draw our grid here. Just follow what we have been doing since the beginning. You can see build type is here, but it's not the master column. So let's make it master. We click on the header here, and then we make sure split rows based on this column is selected. Now it is master column. Let's push this up a little bit. And on the header again, let's split over the text. Let's detect the carriage return on this, if a carriage return detects. And to make sure we have a correct extraction, let's make sure the value must meet a regular expression. So the program, we want the program to, every time it reads 4 letters and 6 digits separated by a slash, it knows it as a new cell. So we need capital letters and curly brackets 4 times, and a slash, a hyphen, and then we want digits, that's how you type in numbers, 6 times. And then we don't want to use the full line, so we just click OK. Now here we have everything set up for this part. Let's just go here on the, just get out of here, and on the grid menu, let's make sure we use it on all pages, and that the upper limit is table start, the lower limit is table end, and the upper position is relative to report split. And you can see a new anchor has been created. Now, if we click read, you can see we have a problem here, because the last field, the build type, is not set up correctly. So we just go on options. Let's go to our last field. Let's make it custom. We don't want to remove the carriage return, and on function, let's make it cut last line off, and the column will be itself. We are good to go. Let's just check everything is good here. Everything is looking good. And everything's looking good. So let's just click OK and click read. Now you can see it's all correctly read. But once again, if we go to the second document where you have documents that change the data, that change pages, you can see it's actually correctly read because it has all the data on this page. But if the data were to go to the next page, you would see an error here. To make sure we don't see that error, we click on Edit Grid, making sure we are on Grid Control Tree, Edit Grid. We go to the Grid menu here, and then we make sure the upper position is relative to the background. And now, no more errors. That means we are good to go. Now would be the time where you go to the scan input. You could delete those documents. Just come here and click select all, and then you can delete selection, and you would just import your files, all of them. Now click yes, make sure you have convert pages to images, 300, and extract text, and click OK. And that will be the time. And then you would just select all again, and on process selection, you have to make sure you have OCR trigger selected, you have read field selected, and you have read grid control selected. And then you click OK, and that will be a matter of sitting and waiting for the program to read all your data. That shouldn't take long. We only have one document. That shouldn't be hard. And when you go to the modules panel, you can see we have the information here. Now the easy part, to export it. We go up here on the export batch button, and you can see we have a PDF export to the file system. Let's just click on the PDF export and delete it. We don't need another PDF file. You can delete it on that button here, and let's create a new one. We go on the button here, the green button, to add an output. Let's make it XML. report to the file system, and then we click add. Now here you can select one XML per batch, one XML per page. We just want one per batch because we probably would want the same. And here we can make sure our fields are being exported. You have document type, truck ID, driver name, and down here you have the grid control module. If you had that set to no, to false, your grid data wouldn't be exported. So we make sure everything is true here. And if you have some data you don't want to export, you just don't select it, make it false. Everything is true, so we just click OK. And here we can control the directory structure, the extension, we just leave as it is. We click on the file system here on that export and then click on export now button. Let's click on the module here, the XML module here, and click on the file and then open file. And we can see that everything was imported correctly. You can see the sender type, you can see the name of the sender, and if you go through the document, you can see all the data has been imported correctly. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about that type of data extraction, you can just contact our support team. They will be ready to answer all of your questions. Bye bye. See you on the next tutorial.